So get this, my fiance's father. My fiance is named Nick, and well, his father is saying that we are not meant to be. I'm not good enough for him. Well, guess what? Nick then goes on to break my little heart, and listens to his father and breaks up with me. Guys, I wish you could have seen the look on his face once his father realized exactly who my father was, and man, he looks so stupid.
I would need to start my story right from the beginning so you could understand how lucky I feel. I'm the last daughter and child of my parents. I have 2 elder sisters who are already married. My mother's a nurse while my father's a retired fireman. He retired pretty early due to injuries sustained at work, and when you say someone's committed to his job, you would basically be talking about my father. Rather than several medals which my father deserved from the New Haven community citizens, he had lots of scars on his body. He was a greatly loved man by everybody. Well, as a result of who my father was, we regularly enjoyed favors as a family and as individuals. It was really nice to be associated with my father as his daughter, who would not welcome the idea of having a father who was seen as a community hero. I mean, come on. Remember I said my dad retired early, right? This was because of an incident that occurred some 15 years ago. I remember vividly because it occurred on the day of my 9th birthday celebration. We were all at home and in the evening expecting my father's return from work, as we did not want to start the party without him. But rather than having him back, we got a call from one of his colleagues that asked my mother to rush down to the hospital. So my mom left the trio of my sister and me at home as she rushed out of the house. As kids who were known to be curious, we wanted to know where she was heading to and why my birthday was suddenly not so important anymore. But my mother simply told my eldest sister to look after us and that she would be back soon. Well, my mother did not keep her word as she did not come back that night. My sister and I stayed up most of the night waiting for our parents to return home so my party could go and get started, but hey, they never showed up. I slept in my birthday dress. We were still wondering where our parents were the next morning when my mother's sister who lived in the neighborhood came to check up on us. She informed us that Mom sent us. We asked her where our mother went, and she just said our mom was busy, but she would be back home soon. We became restless. We refused to eat the meals she prepared, and before she knew what was happening, we began wailing like kids who had lost their parents. We just knew something was wrong. It was the midst of the whole commotion that my aunt called our mom, explained to her the situation of things, and my mother spoke with us over the phone, reassuring us that everything was fine. Even though we'd spoken to our mother, there was this uneasy feeling that we could not shake off. We had informed our mom that our father was yet to come back home since yesterday, and she simply said that all was good. She claimed that she had spoken with our father before calling us, and he was held down by some work. My mom, however, did not tell us when either she or Dad would be coming home. It took 3 days. 3 days before we laid eyes on Mom, and she came home to pick up some clothing, and we observed that most of the clothing she was taking was Dad's. The moment my mother got home, visitors and sympathizers began strolling by. Some brought already cooked meals, while others gave our mother monetary gifts. The whole thing made us ask questions. Why were we receiving visitors like something's bad happened? Why were they bringing gifts to sympathize with us? One surprise in all this was the fact that each time these visitors came around, my mother would ask her sister who had been staying with us to take us to the room. She did not want us to hear what was being discussed with the guest. We would hear her burst into tears at several points in time, and before my mother left with my father's belongings, she called my sisters and me and asked that we behaved very well, as though she and our father were around. We still repeated the question of our father's whereabouts, and she said that she would return with him just a few days' time. There was nothing we could do. We could not force her to tell us the truth that she was hiding because we suspected something was fishy. We accepted to conduct ourselves in an orderly manner while she was away. Ever since the whole saga, we had not been going to school. Our aunt had stopped us from going till our mother came home. When our mother returned to wherever she came from, we were then allowed to resume. The first day we resumed school, it was something else. Everyone looked at us like we had seen a ghost. The whole thing just felt off. Our teachers were super nice to us, and it was worrying, because we had not done anything to deserve the kind gestures that they were showing. I met with my direct elder sister during recess that day. I complained to her about how everybody was just acting super cool towards me for no reason. To my surprise, she said the same thing was experiencing with her. We were contemplating going to meet with our eldest sister, who we saw her running towards us at that moment. She informed us that one of her classmates had directly come to sympathize with her about what happened to our father. We were shocked, but it made sense. Our father was in some kind of trouble, and that was why we had not seen him or spoken to him for days. We could not wait for school to dismiss that day, because the moment we got home, we asked our aunt what happened to our dad. The way the question came, she could not lie to us anymore. That doesn't mean she told us the truth, though, not the whole truth. She said that our father had been involved in an accident on the day when I was supposed to celebrate my birthday, and my mother had been with him in the hospital ever since. She tried assuring us that our father was okay, but her assurance meant little to us. We began to cry and demand to be taken to our parents. It did not take long for our aunt to discover that she could not handle this. She had no other option than to call Mother and tell her what we know. Our mother spoke with us and told us our father was doing great, actually. And that was not a lie. We spoke with him. Hearing his voice was the assurance that we needed, and he promised us that he would be back home soon. We waited in anticipation for his return, and our father was finally discharged from the hospital, and it turned out that we were not the only ones who were waiting for his arrival. The whole community was even more anxious to receive him, and I will never forget the day that he came home. My sister and I discovered that our aunt had hidden the severity of the situation from us. We saw our father, whom we knew to be strong and agile. He was limping. He'd suffered several degrees of burns on his hand. Everyone began praising him the moment he alighted from the vehicle that conveyed him home. The actual story of what went down that night is that my father's department had received a distress call from a store that was in flames. The store was a story building, and most customers were stranded inside. My father and his team had gotten there, and while they did the whole evacuation thing, they discovered there was a little boy. He was stuck at the top floor. Without giving much of a thought to it, he went back inside for that boy. It was while my father was trying to evacuate the boy from the top floor using the rope technique method that he broke his leg. The rope had cut while my dad was making the descent, and my father's department made an inquiry as to who was responsible for checking this equipment that they used, and it turned out that it was one of my father's colleagues, Mr. Pope. My father knew it meant that his colleague would be dismissed and could even be sued for negligence. My father took the fall. Pops told his supervisors that it was he, not Mr. Pope, who was responsible for checking the instruments. He reasoned that since he was not going to be able to be a fireman anymore, he could just save Mr. Pope's job. The father of the boy who my father saved, by the way, he paid for every bit of my father's expenses, but my dad could no longer work as what he wanted, his dream of fireman, so he got into retirement pretty early. This did not mean we suffered. I mean, we were not super rich, but I can't remember a time since after the fire accident when we had to borrow or be hungry. This is 15 years now, and my father, through a single heroic deed, has been influential in the community, and you must not understand my reason for starting my story from where I did, but just hang on. It will all make sense very soon. I rounded up my college education 2 years ago, and I've been teaching in one of the elementary schools in our community. The pay was not much, but I felt satisfied doing it. My parents' modest lifestyle robbed me, and My sister are both married, as most of my friends are, and they would often ask me when I would be walking down the aisle. Marriage has never been an issue to me, but I met the love of my life last year when I went to visit a friend in a different part of the city. His name's Nick. He's a senior sales officer at a large tech firm, and I can say he is my kind of man. Nick and I have been dating for a while now, and he recently surprised me with an engagement party. He did this after I had introduced him to a little circle of friends, and the party was extravagant, and I would not have supported it if it was my opinion was sought beforehand. As expected, I said yes when he got on a knee and asked me to be his wife. It was after that I had said yes to his proposal that it dawned on me that I had not done much digging about his family background. Neither was he concerned about mine, and I only knew his parents were rich, retired folks who ran several chains of businesses. Nick took me to see his family, and I could say they were receptive to me, though I felt an air of displeasure in the atmosphere. Nick began pushing to meet with my parents, and I decided to tell my parents about him before having him come around. Something interesting happened the moment I sat with my parents, and as soon as I mentioned Nick's surname, my father began giving an avid description of his father. Well, I was shocked. It was very clear that was someone my father must have known in the past. I was not prepared for what my father said next. He noted that Nick was the son of Mr. Pope, who was somewhat or wholly responsible for the life injury he was carrying. It turned out Mr. Pope quit the fire service work the moment his older brother passed. His parent handed over the family business to him, and he spent years building the empire and is currently thinking of running for political office. Hearing that my fiancé's father was indebted to my dad in a sense gave me confidence that he would be more friendly to me when he found out who my father was. I decided I would not tell my fiancé about it, though. Nick finally met my parents, and they warmly welcomed him. My dad kept the saga that had occurred between him and Nick's father. Nick would be touched by my father's physical condition. Little did he know that it was his dad that was the cause of this. Nick would be turning 25 in 2 weeks, and I'm organizing a party. I plan on having our both parents present, as the whole thing would be absolutely epic. I'd be getting to visit Nick's parents to seek their opinion about how I can make the party something Nick would never forget. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a great day. There's a few updates to hop into, so we're going to jump into update number 1, and things are probably not going to go as you thought, because this update has a twist. If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button for daily videos, and here's your update. I finally get why I had felt an air of uneasiness when I met with my in-laws for the first time. I'd been trying to see how I could organize a party for my fiancé who's their son, and I went to seek their opinion on the kind of things he would appreciate. I got to the house, and my father-in-law-to-be was around with his wife. I began trying to establish a conversation between them, and though they gave me their opinions of things which I could feature in the party, I could tell their minds were set on other things. Nick's parents suggested that I did things that would require quite some money. Yeah, I forgot to mention that I was throwing the party with my own money, and the fact that I was an elementary teacher meant I did not have that much to spend. Besides, a life of moderation is something I had come to embrace, so I found it difficult trying to incorporate their suggestions. I just wanted the party to be something small. Something that would involve the two families alone and maybe some important friends in Nick's life, but Nick's parents suggested I accommodated a huge number. And well, after listening to their suggestion, I decided I would give it some thought, and I thanked my in-laws for their warm welcome, and was about to take my leave when they demanded I stayed back, as there was something else they needed to discuss. At first, I was glad my in-laws wanted to bond some more, but I soon discovered it was the direct opposite. Nick's father began by appreciating the fact that I was a nice person with a wonderful personality. Though he was singing my praise, it meant little to me because I am no kid. I knew that praise singing is usually what you do before you give somebody a piece of disappointing news. So I braced up. After he was done exalting me, he went on to say that he did not think I was the person most suited for their son. I tried to understand what he meant by me not being suited for his son. I knew I had done nothing wrong. I mean, they would have said so if I did, and not wasted time beating about the bush. I could say so far that I had not given them any reason to feel like Nick and I were incompatible. I calmly asked them to explain deeper, but Nick's father just said that they were not okay with the whole thing going on between me and Nick. He demanded I put an end to it. I was hurt by the demand which was being thrown at me. I asked them what Nick's opinion was on the matter, and they said his opinion would not differ from theirs in any sort of way. I could not just meet their demand of breaking up with their son without hearing it directly from his face, so I simply said that I needed to speak with Nick first. Even if he was in support of the whole breakup thing, he needed to look me in the eye and say it right to my face, Nick. Would you believe it if I said that Mr. Pope offered me money? Money to leave my son. Well, that is just what he did. He asked me to name a price, and I initially felt he was just pulling my leg, to maybe test my loyalty or something, but it turned out that he was dead serious. He brought out a signed check and asked me to write a figure. I felt disgusted at the fact that they were maybe seeing me as some sort of gold digger. Well, I showed them that I was not. I turned down the money and respectfully took my leave. Update number 2. I've finally broken up with Nick. Well, technically speaking, he broke up with me, I guess. After I left his parents' house that day, I did something serious thinking about what I should do. I did not believe Nick was in support of our breakup because I was sure he loved me to the moon and back. I decided I would speak with him, and if he was willing to hold on to what we shared, then I would not let go. Besides, I was optimistic at the fact that if his parents were to meet with mine, then they would bond very well, and the whole, quote, "You're not the one best suited for our son" nonsense would just be tossed aside. I called Nick and we met up at a coffee shop. From the look of things, I suspected he was ignorant about the whole ordeal. I mean, he was still enthusiastic and positive about the whole marriage thing. I just explained to him that what had transpired between his parents and me, and he was distraught. I pleaded with him, though, to not go creating problems. I gave the excuse that they were probably looking out for their son, something which most parents would do, and Nick assured me that nothing would separate us, and he said all we needed to do was hold on to each other till his parents see that they could not influence us. My confidence level rose after my discussion with Nick. I went on to plan the party, and I equally involved my parents. The day finally came, and it was a nice atmosphere. My prediction about Nick's parents bonding with mine was absolutely spot on. The moment Mr. Pope set eyes on my father, they locked themselves up in a strong embrace. I was glad, though taken aback, as Mr. Pope did not come across to me as someone emotional. He was surprised to see my father in his house, as if it had been years since they had seen or heard from each other. He was more surprised to learn that the man who saved his butt years ago was in fact my father. In the midst of all that was going on, I discovered that Nick was nowhere to be seen. I went looking for him as I wanted him to see for himself how our parents were catching up with each other, and I found him seated in his room, lost in thought. I did not want to say a word. I just attempted to pull him to his feet so that he could come to see himself, but he stopped me. He claimed that there was something he needed us to discuss. I did not think anything else could be more important than what I wanted to show him at the moment, but I decided to first listen to him as his demeanor was really sad. Nick began to say that he was in love with me and that we had to say what was not going to be easy. I could tell that his parents had gotten to him. He went on to say, well, we had to break up. He just said it like it was nothing, and I just stood there looking at the guy who had told me a few days back that we needed to hold on to each other. Nick went on to say that his father, who recently delved into politics and was particular about who Nick ended up marrying, gave him a dirty slap, and I walked out of the house. I did not create a scene, though. Update number 3. I stayed at my friend's place for a while, and I had left the party, and I just don't know how the party ended. I switched off my phone as I knew my parents would be trying to reach me. I didn't want any disturbance from anyone. I was already bad enough that I had news about my breakup traveling like wildfire. After spending a few days at my friend's place, I decided to go back home. I knew I could not hide the breakup from my parents forever, and my parents were shocked and happy to see me at the same time. It was like they'd received their dead daughter back from the dead. They were asking me lots of questions that I was simply just not ready to answer. They went ahead to tell me that my ex-fiancé Nick had been looking for me. I did not take the whole thing seriously. I explained to them that Nick and I were done with our relationship, and there's no hope of marriage happening between us. My parents disagreed. They told me Nick had explained to them what happened and he was willing to patch things up, and I got angry hearing that Nick wanted to patch things up with me. I was still in the process of dealing with the pain and resentment which I felt when Nick showed up at our house 3 days later. My parents had informed him that I was around, and they'd been trying to convince him to pick up his phone call and make up with him. Nick began apologizing while at the same time claiming his father had gotten a change of heart after he learned she was the daughter of the man who saved his life, well, a long time ago. I still listened to his apology when he noted his father who, had led him to the breakup with him was now mounting pressure on him to make up with me, as it was equally helping his image since my father was a well-respected and influential person in the community. I just did not know what to make of the whole thing. Did Nick want to get back to me because he loved me, or because his father was now mounting pressure for him to do so? Last I checked, a relationship was supposed to be between 2, not 3. I still loved Nick, but I would not just let this whole thing slide easily. I made up my mind to get revenge in my way, and I told Nick that I needed time to heal and think things over. I just asked him to give me a few days just to think about stuff, and Nick did not even let me rest. He began calling and texting, and he even sent flowers to me like he was trying to woo me afresh. He acted like he was still love-struck, and I guess he was. But I needed to make him suffer a little bit for not being man enough to stand by me when it mattered. Nick came to check up on me today. I knew he'd be coming around, and so I purposely went on a date. He was still at home when I was dropped off by my date, and I could see jealousy flooding his face. I went on to tell him that I was not sure we were meant for each other, and that it would be best if he just dropped the trying and just stopped it. Well, Nick felt terrible. I could see it. I do hope he still presses further. Update number 4. I never saw my scheme going as far as it did, and it paid off. After I lied to Nick that I was seeing somebody and felt it was best we stayed apart from each other, I get a text from somebody I never expected. His father. He was inviting me over to his house to have dinner with his family, and I knew he was just trying to get me and Nick back together, and though I wanted that, I declined. I was not done playing hard. Nick's father showed the level of desperation a few days later, as he and Nick were both driven down to our home. It was on a weekend, and I was taking a nap when my mother interrupted it. I knew it had to be something to do with Nick, and I still felt sleepy, but the sleep instantly vanished the moment she said Mr. Pope needs to see me. I got that sitting room, where he was already discussing with my father. Nick was looking rather sad, But his father just chit-chatted away with Pops like there's no issue, and Nick's father extended his arms towards me as an invitation for an embrace. He was trying to act drama. I did not want to seem impolite, so heck, I obliged. The moment he had his arms around me, he noted that he had come to see why his daughter-in-law had been avoiding his family for a while. I was keeping a long face as I needed to play the victim, but I swear I fought hard to contain a smile. He was already calling me his daughter-in-law. I looked at my parents and they were all smiles, ear to ear, grins all around. Mr. Pope had gotten to them. I kept quiet and said nothing while my father-in-law continued to talk. He mentioned that I was understandably upset at the way things had turned out between us the last time we met and spoke. Well, he claimed that he never expected me to take it as far as I did, and I was waiting for the part where he would offer his apology and I would just have my pride and ego stroked a bit, but he diverted the responsibility to his son with his next statement. I'm still trying to figure out what my son was thinking when he demanded you guys break up. He said as though he was not the one who had engineered everything, and parents would always find a way to not be at fault, and he shot Nick a look as though he expected him now's the time to make the move. Well, I guess you could say Nick picked up on the clue. He got to his knees and began begging for an apology for breaking up with me, telling me how sorry he was. I did not want to act like I was dying to make up with him, so I still acted tough. I noted that he had shamed me in front of friends by calling off our engagement, and Mr. Pope immediately insisted that Nick would host a party in the honor where he would apologize for humiliating me in front of everybody. I did not want to push the matter further. I could not risk saying no and then having Nick change his mind. I mean, heck, I do still love him. To cut my update short, we're back together and preparations for our wedding are underway. I guess my next updates will come as a married woman. Update number 5. This is the final update in the saga. Just like I noted during my last update, I'm now a married woman. Everything happened so fast. My father-in-law, Mr. Pope, made it so as he did not want to risk any chance of having me change my mind. I did not get the party which I was promised, though. I stopped him from organizing it. I did not think it was necessary. I was satisfied with the fact that the marriage was going on after everything that happened. The day of my wedding was all glitz and glamour, courtesy of my father-in-law. It was extravagant. He did his best to ensure that I had little to do with the wedding planning. It was a wedding fit for a queen, and he covered every bit of the cost. The wedding witnessed different dignitaries from all over, from top politicians down to the community folk, who had always been supportive of my dad. The event was covered by a local, popular TV station. The major reason for this update, though, is not to bore you with the fact that I had the wedding of the, century. Far from that. I'm to the point of the fact that the parents would always find a way to blame their kids for their mistakes. My father-in-law is the prime example. The wedding ceremony was over, and the reception immediately took place. I'd stopped the pre-wedding party, which was supposed to be held to appease me, but that did not stop Mr. Pope from going ahead to do what he did. He called the attention of everybody there, somewhere along the lines, and began to give a speech about he and my dad, how we went back over 15 years, and he painted the picture of two best friends who would stick their neck out for each other, and I looked at my father's face to see his reaction to his in-laws' exaggeration, and he just smiled. He obviously would not stand up to, deny his in-laws' claims. The climax of the whole thing was when my father-in-law went ahead to sing my praise. He called me a jewel, and noted that he was shocked when his son informed him that he had broken up with me, and he claimed he had to walk over and knock some sort of sense into old Nick, just to make him realize that my type was rare to find. I was amused at the fact that he reaped the blame on Nick, but it made me happy that he sang my praise. He gave a toast to me for accepting his son, and the whole place erupted in applause, and I'm happily married now, and my father-in-law's gotten his public image boosted. Thank you for listening to my, drama.
Alright guys, so I'll just let you know, the comment section of this one was bonkers. Half of the people were so upset with OP for taking him back and going back with this guy, even though it seems like he's a complete floor mat and does whatever his father tells him to. But there were other people that were saying, hey, it's very clear that OP loves this guy. She loves Nick. So it doesn't really hurt that they got back together, since Nick and OP were not the ones who initially messed up the relationship, it was the father. So let me know, if you were in this weird situation that's not very common, what do? Do you take him back, or do you say, you know what? I don't think that just because now you know who my father is, makes all your prior actions before what you did to me right. I don't think so. So you know what? We're going to stay separated. Guys, drop your opinion down below. What you would do. I'll talk to you guys in the comment section. See you in the next video. I'll see ya.